Welcome back to the channel. This is part 2 of the tutorial of how to configure the Virtual Avionics MCP in SPADNEXT for the use of P3 in P3D along with the Prosim737. So let's get started. This would be only for the buttons and the switches along with the encoders. For the LEDs and the displays, I've made a tutorial previously. Please watch that. It gives you all the explanation in there. So for the switches and buttons, we are going to use the vJoy. If you have not got vJoy, just search for Google it for vJoy and download it and install it. This is a virtual joystick creation, and we will create a virtual joystick only for this use. So I would go into configure vJoy, and here if you see I've already configured a vJoy. I've removed all the access here. I've unticked them, so I don't need them. I need only these buttons, and I need you can do a maximum of 128 buttons or switches, but I need only 21, so I put 25 in here, and that's it. I am going to close this. Once you close it, this will be available in SPAD for you to use it. So open up SPAD. While SPAD is loading, let us also open up the Prosim737 software so we know what we should be doing in there. And while these two are opening up, let me quickly show you in here. I've used the offsets in here. Let me zoom it up for you. These are the offsets that I placed in the XML folder, which I've explained in my previous tutorial where to place it. So these are the offsets that we would be using for the encoders. And for the buttons and switches, as I said, we will be using in the um, vJoy buttons, which we will see in a while. So the first thing to do in SPAD is go into your configuration, and since we have already done vJoy, here you would see all the vJoy. So for me it is 3 vJoys. I would be using in 2 in here. So this is the one we just created with 25 buttons. If you see them, you can also use this. But since I have, just for the demonstration purposes, I've created this. But for me, I'm going to use vJoy 2 as my usage. So for these button switches, we're going to click on the switch, and for the auto throttle, let's take this as an example. I'm using button 1. So let me delete this, and I will configure it newly. Save, and then add event. And in this case, it's going to be a switch on state. What do I do when the switch is on? I go into actions. I go into advanced. I use my vJoy stick. And like I said, it's going to be vJoy 2 for me. And for the auto throttle, I will choose button number 1. Okay. And since it is an on off switch, for the on state here, the switch on state here, I would be using a press event. Click OK. And again, OK. And here I go. I save it. For the off state, I would do the same. So I would go into the off state, add actions, advanced, virtual joystick. For me, it's virtual joystick 2. And it's going to be a button 1, the same button, but this time it will be a release event since it's an off state. I click OK and OK. So that's it you need to do in SPAD for the switches, and the same you would do for the flight director switches, where I've chosen button number 2, an off state and an on state. For the push buttons, okay, we will use button number 5. So let me delete this, and I will do it again for demonstration. So I go in here, I press short term or a short press, the same, advanced, FSUIPC, sorry, it will be virtual joystick 2, and button number 5 in my case, and this time it will be a press and release event since it's a push button. For the on off state it was a press or a release. Here it is a press and a release event. I click OK and click OK. That's it. So you do the same for all the other push buttons with the press and release state, and for the switches it will be a press or a release state since it's an on off state. For the encoders, let's do one encoder here. It would be, I press on the encoder button, add event, and this time we will do a clockwise turn or a right turn. We would go into add actions, change data value, because when you rotate the encoder, you're going to change the value of the encoder. So you change the encoder, and since I've already placed the file like I explained before, it would be available as MCP encoder under my FSUIPC tree. So I would click this, and since it's a course 1, I'm going to choose the course 1 encoder here. Click OK, and I'm going to, since it is a right turn, I would increment it by 1. So I would put in a 1 here and click OK and OK. That's about it. I save, and again for the counterclockwise or the reverse clock, whatever you want to call it, you do the same counterclockwise, add actions, change data value, FSUIPC, Prosim encoder, it's encoder 1, sorry, course 1, click OK, and this time I would decrement it by 1 because it's an opposite direction, so I reduce the value or decrement it. Click OK and OK. So you do the rest of the encoders. So let me do one more here for you for the altitude encoder, because I would show you something different. Add clockwise, add actions, change data value, and I would choose the altitude encoder, which is the first one in my list. Click OK. I would increment it since it's a clockwise direction. I would increment it by 1. What do I mean by 1 here? 1 click will increase it. And here I would do the acceleration on, because this is an altitude and you can go all the way up to 40,000 feet. Let's say, for example, you are at 5,000 feet and you get a clearance to go to flight level 320 as an example. So the number of turns that you would need to go to 320, flight level 320 or 32,000 will be a lot. So what this would do is it will quickly increment or accelerate the encoder value. Okay, so leave the rest as default, click OK and save. And you would do the same for counterclockwise direction. Counterclockwise, add actions, change data value, and the MCP altitude encoder is already selected here. Click OK, and this time you would decrement it by 1, meaning 1 click, and I would put the accelerator on, click OK and save. All right, so you can do the rest of the configuration in here. The same applies for all the encoders, and choose the appropriate value. For course 2, you use the FSUIPC course 2 values, which you see in the SPAD GUI, and complete the same. So that's all you need to do in SPAD. Now what we need to do in Prosim, we will have a look. Let's go into Prosim. All right, for the encoders, I would go in and I will feed in all the FSUIPC values that we have put in the SPAD. So it will be a 16-bit encoder, okay, value. And the value for this altitude is going to be 5352, okay. And for the course 1, it's going to be course 1 is 5354. Course 2 is going to be 5356. For the heading value, it is 535 alpha. For the vertical speed, it's going to be 535 Charlie C. Sorry, this is the speed, not the vertical speed. The speed is 5358. My apologies. And for the vertical speed, it is 16-bit 535 Charlie. Okay, so these are the 5 offsets that we have programmed in the FSUIPC in SPAD, which you can quickly see here. Five three five two for the altitude, which is what for the altitude it is 5352, the same in here. For the course 1 it is 5354, so the course 1 value is 5354. Okay, so it's the same values that you feed into Prosim. And for the, that's it for the encoders. And for the switches, since we have used the vJoy in here, it's a lot more easier. So let's take the N1 switch for example. So you go down to the MCP. Okay, N1, find N1. Here you go, N1 is here. So on the N1 in your hardware, MCP Virtual Avionics hardware, you click N1. You would see here the direct joystick input button number 5, which is what we programmed in SPAD here. For the N1 switch, if you see here, it is button number 5. So the same button number 5 appears in your, when you press the physical switch on your hardware, you see button number 1. All you need to do is go and click the MCP N1 pushed button and it will automatically register here. Okay, let me show it to you. Not connected. So when I press this, it automatically takes button number 5. That's all. So if you have done all the buttons in the SPAD, you would just click each button and assign the value in here by pressing the A in here after you press the button. For the switches, it is the same. Let me remove this here so I can show it to you. I go and flip the auto throttle arm switch on my hardware. I switch it on and here you see we did button number 1 for the auto throttle on in the SPAD. So here when I click auto throttle arm, it is button number 1 and the same button number 1 is here. So all I now need to do is MCP auto throttle arm switch. Let me show it to you. I click, so it automatically takes the button number 1. And so on. You, when you flip the flight director switch, it will be button number 2. So button number 2 is here. And then you go into your flight director switch here. Yeah. And you click flight director on, which is the first officer, or we need the captain since I switched on the left hand side. So the flight director on and I click OK, it takes button number 2, which is here you see button number 2. So all you need to do is flip each switch and then assign the value in Prosim, and that's all you need to do. And all the values are in here. You click OK and it is registered. Now let me fire up the sim and show it to you in action as to how this functions, and see you in a bit. All right, now we have the simulator fully on and configured. Let's see if the MCP works after programming. We put the flight directors on, the left side flight directors as well, and the right side is also, I'm switching it on. Yes, they all work. Um, Now let's move some of the encoders. Here we have the speed also changing, and here you can see at the back the Prosim MCP is also changing course. The heading, decrease, increase, the altitude indicator. So it shows us the value, 16,000. Auto throttle, when it comes on, the indicator gets on, LNAV gets engaged. So everything is perfectly working as long as you configured it properly. And hope this was helpful, and see you in a future video. Bye bye.